YouTube Global. So hopefully everybody is okay with this. Oh, I've managed to swap the, so thank you everybody for joining us. Today, we want to share with as many people as let me just switch that off. It's let me just double check what's happening. Right. No, I think there we go. I'm hoping that we're live streaming. Right now, I'm not 100% sure that we are. Let me just try once more. No, we are live streaming. Okay, great. So thank you all for joining us. Today, we wanted to share what these projects on understanding of some of the gender barriers in STEM are with the wider audience. So this is very much an event about talking about all the projects up to date. It is a general information. I have invited our consultant in Africa, Paul Bernard Noah. Paul, are you there? Would you like to switch on your camera and wave to everybody? Paul, are you there? We are having a few connection problems, as you can all imagine. So with the internet across the world. So I'll ask Paul to introduce himself at the appropriate time if he's not able to right now. So thank you all for joining us. I hope this is going to be interesting. I'm going to encourage you all to take part and to join in some polls. So this is what we'll try and do today. It's a little bit of an introduction about us and about INWES, but also perceptions of gender barriers, the projects, what they were about, why we did them. I've invited our assistant consultant to talk about the dissemination that happened in Africa. I will also talk about some of the outputs and outcomes, in particular the GISE index that we're proposing, and hopefully there'll be lots of time for questions and comments at the end. I am Sarah Peers. I was the project manager for the project, for the GISE project from 2021 to 2022. I've already mentioned Paul Bernard Noah, who's here from Cameroon, and he was our assistant consultant for GISE in Africa. And of course, I will try and encourage you all to take part. And if you have any comments, please put them in the chat. I will try to keep an eye out on the chat for questions and comments for the appropriate time. I will ask you all to just keep your microphone off when not speaking so that the sound quality is good. So for anybody who doesn't know much about INWES, INWES is a global network of organizations of women in STEM, and we are also very much aligned to the United Nations. We're an official NGO partner to UNESCO and to the UN ECOSOC. We have observer status with the UNFCCC, and we are participants as with this event in CSW, in the Commission for Status of Women, and also UNESCO Women events wherever we can. We have over 50 organizational members. We represent at least 250,000 women across the world. For much more information, I could tell you lots about our objectives, but as part of the CSW 67 events, people have presented the objectives and our general activities in other presentations. So if you go to INWES Global, you will see those other presentations. So for example, Nadia Ghazali, thank you for joining us, presented on INWES generally at one of the events. You will see those presentations and you can find out more about us. Thank you. But our mission is to build a better future worldwide through the full and effective participation of women and girls in all aspects of STEM. And there is our website. So a little bit of history to the GISE projects and surveys. So GISE stands for Perceptions of Gender Barriers in Science and Engineering. The Association of Korean Women Scientists and Engineers, KWSE, started these projects. KWSE is a very active member and very valued member of INWES. The project is funded by the South Korean government, and the initial aim was to compare women in STEM situations in Korea with other countries. The project first began in 2014 and was conducted by KWSE for 5 consecutive years. The study at first, the surveys that were carried out were focused on Asian Pacific nations, particularly Korea, obviously. Initially, the surveys were for women, then there was a survey for men, then there was a survey for young people and students. The work that has been carried out since 2021 in collaboration with INWES was part of a concerted effort by KWSE to bring the survey and the project to an international level. So, first of all, we have a long-term goal, both INWES, KWSE, and most of our members, which is around gender equity in STEM. So the ultimate goal for these particular projects was to build a policy roadmap to ensure that there was balanced development of future human resources worldwide. But I guess one of the initial questions we have to ask ourselves is, how do we know that we have achieved equity? So what I have done now, and I'm asking for your thoughts and your views on this, is I've created a poll. I hope this is a fun poll. I will launch this now. I would like you to choose one of the options for why or how we would know that we have achieved gender equity in STEM. I hope this is working. And please choose one of those options. If you feel that none of them fit, then please do not answer any. So I'll spot that. So how will we have known that we have achieved equity in STEM? Will it be because there will be equal numbers of every group in all sectors of STEM? Will it be because all groups and characteristics are able to be leaders and perhaps can take part in innovation in research? Will it be because people feel that they can access and participate in all areas without any feelings of barriers? So most people have answered now. I'm just going to give you all one more second to answer. Okay, I'll stop now. I'll stop now. There we go. And I'm going to share the results. So as you can see, the majority of people, 3/4, I mean, we are a small sample. We are a very small sample, but as you can see, people have chosen the third option, that there is a feeling that you can access and participate without any barriers. So I think this is quite a key question, because when we go back to the GISE project, you'll see how this comes through. And let me just close that. So what KWSE have done, and we have replicated in the past couple of years, is that they focused on perceptions of gender barriers, not on numbers, and not on leadership, etc. The focus was very much on, how do you feel about your participation in STEM? And that really addresses that third question, and that third option for that poll. So, and I have to say, as a mathematician, when I first heard of this, of these studies, and I was first taking part in this, I was thinking, surely the important thing is the actual numbers of people. But then I realized that no, it is the perceptions. It is how you feel when you're working in these areas. So the purpose of the first international study in 2021 was really to look at those gender perceptions, continue that work that KWSE were doing around gender perceptions, around surveys of not numbers of people, not who was where, whether they're in leadership, whether they're actually coming into the sector, but more about what they felt about being in STEM. And then do some analysis according to country, gender, and age, and make this a foundation for the future of these surveys. We had some targets and numbers very much as a sort of pilot. And we had a budget from a very generous budget from KWSE and the Korean government to help us with project management and honorariums and any other resources that were needed. In the 2022 study, which is a second survey that was carried out in 2022, we continued with the 2021 study frame. But instead of focusing on some STEM clusters, we looked at all of STEM. And we also had a request to make sure that we could actually reach more of Africa. We also hope to collaborate with further groups outside INWES, and there is some work still to be done around that, but also develop an index to measure progress of gender equality in STEM. And the targets and numbers were increased, of course, and we had that requirement to reach out to Africa as much as possible. So we had an extra budget for dissemination in Africa. I'm showing this to anybody who is interested in doing similar work. This is how we phased it. We had particularly advisory groups in particularly for the 2021. And we had several meetings for the advisory groups, etc. One of the things that we discovered was actually it was the small expert meetings where we had a lot of commentary. Nadia, you will remember you gave us a lot of support and lots of feedback on the statistical issues, and which were very welcome because they raised possible issues quite early on, and it meant that we did a double check of various different things quite early on. So in 2022, it was very much similar, but instead of having a big advisory group, we still had advisors, but we would meet with them regularly and in a small way. The questionnaire, what did the questionnaire look like? Well, the questionnaire was based on past questionnaires, and it was very much about perceptions, as I keep on mentioning. There was a section B, which was about the perception of gender barriers in STEM. So did people feel, it wasn't about their personal experiences, it was about, did they feel that girls and boys got the same information on careers in STEM? Did they feel that in general women got access to STEM, etc.? Were there positive role models, etc.? Sections C and D were questions very much about people's own experience, either their direct experience, what happened to them, or indirect experience because they were men, but they could see whether or not various different things were happening to women. Then there was a section on policy, a short section on policy. And particularly on the questions around whether or not there should be quota systems, whether or not there should be particular policies to support women in STEM, etc. Then there was a general section F on gender roles. So asking questions such as, should men be the primary breadwinners, etc. Section G was around the perceptions of harassment and lack of promotional offers and funding once people were in the workplace. And then finally, in 2021, we added a new section compared to what had happened previously in the KWSE surveys, and asked questions around the respondents' own STEM career, whether they were happy with their STEM career, whether they felt that they had plenty of support, etc. All the responses were either were on Likert scale from 1 to 5, where 1 means strongly agree or had experienced, 5 meant strongly disagree or not experienced. Now, the questions were a mix. Some of the questions were coded so that if it was 1, So if the response was 1, that implied that they had experienced sexism or lack of equity, etc. While other responses, it was the other way around. If it was 5, they had experienced or noted lack of equity. So we did this so that to make sure that we could actually check that questionnaires made sense or the individual responses made sense. And partly, thank you, Nadia, for a lot of the work, the conversations we had with Professor Ghazali, who's a statistics expert, but various other, but also with the country representatives. We also added much more in section A around the confounding variables, the sorts of things that might have an impact on some of these perceptions, irrespective of country or sometimes within the country. So, for example, Professor Singh provided quite a lot of information about the sorts of issues that might affect questions or responses in India. So we added some questions around, particularly for respondents from India, similarly in Latin America, similarly in Mongolia, etc. So the questionnaires looked a little bit like this. We actually wrote them we wrote the first one in English, but very much using the language that KWSE had used. And we produced it as a Google form because we wanted to be able to distribute it around the world. And it felt like Google was probably the most commonly accessible platform, but also Google provided a very nice thing, which was complete anonymity. I can't even say it. Apologies, anonymity. So that was excellent in terms of making sure that we were not accidentally gathering data that would be contrary to EU regulations, and similarly, and in turn to Canadian regulations and, of course, country regulations. Because data privacy was a major issue that we had to concern ourselves quite early on. But this survey was translated into multiple languages, into Mongolian, Japanese, obviously Korean for South Korea, in Spanish, and in French as well. We have also in 2022, we translated it to Portuguese, and thanks to the Taiwanese member in of INWES Twist, it was also translated to Chinese. Excuse me. Right. Now, because 2021 was a pilot survey, we looked at 3 distinct STEM clusters. Now, we wanted to narrow down the scope a little bit because we were worrying that with 1,000 responses, and if we had lots and lots of different STEM sectors and STEM disciplines to consider, that we might very well end up with sample sizes that were far too small to be of interest. So we just looked for 3 STEM clusters that were very distinct, and by distinct that that there was a sort of a bit of a space between each one of them, but with very different issues. And it was mainly to test the methodology. We were not in 2021 wanting to, or we were not aiming to try and address all of the STEM sectors. So we chose these 3 ones. It was very much a choice. Biosciences, very different to engineering, particularly civil and mechanical only engineering. And of course, then computing and information technology is very different, has very different issues to the other 2 sectors. The intention wasn't to try and keep people out of the survey, but the intention was to try and provide a focal point more than anything else. In 2022, however, we knew that we needed to allow all of STEM sectors, so we chose the UNESCO classification that was used by the SAGA toolkit. This is the science, STEM and gender I can't remember what the second A stands for, but it's also about equality and gender toolkit. And we also thought that would be relatively easy to cluster. It wasn't as easy as I hoped at the beginning. But also we were going to allow for people who had changed careers, and there were some slight amendments that we had to do in terms of making sure that it was applicable for the whole world. But it was very much based on that UNESCO classification, so that ideally in the future we might be able to compare backwards. So what did we actually achieve in terms of responses? Well, in 2021, we did achieve, fortunately, the 1,000 responses, but it was very spiky, if you like, in terms of where we got those responses from. We managed to reach 29 countries, but only 5 countries were sort of large enough in terms of sample sizes that we could actually compare. And the gender balance wasn't too poor, but it did actually hide lots of imbalances in countries and regions. And we did have an okay balance, I suppose, for the STEM clusters, but we did have some backlash in terms of people not taking part because they couldn't see whether they were biosciences or IT or engineering. What we then did towards the end of the survey was to open it up to all STEM sectors. And suddenly we got lots of responses, which we were then able to classify according to those 3 clusters, which was rather interesting to do. So by having announced early on only 3 different STEM classifications, we ended up with a small number of responses that, and many people saying, I don't think I'm one of those groups. But when we opened it up to everybody, then suddenly we found lots of people who were either biosciences, engineering, or IT. We carried out analyses based on gender, STEM areas, these 3 STEM areas of focus. We also compared career against other countries. And then for the 5 regions, we also looked at men and women in Korea, men and women in India, men and women in Europe, men and women in Japan, men and women in Mongolia. And then also by STEM areas of focus. And then we also did a final sort of check of, how the variation by economic and human development. We also came up with a proposal for a gender index, so I will talk about that in a moment. In 2022, we achieved at least 2,900 responses, and we had that particular target for Africa of 750. We achieved more than that, so many thanks to Paul Bernard for that. And we did reach a good number of the UN member states. The gender balance was a little bit more balanced. We had 32 specialisms identified, 33 allowing for no STEM, because we were allowing people who had perhaps moved from STEM out of STEM and vice versa. And then we were able to do analyses based on 8 regions and 7 STEM clusters. Some of the lessons learned, and these are really interesting. The first one, the biggest one for me, was by putting a focus and telling people about this focus. We did have an issue in that we had some groups who refused to take part because their area of focus was not included, when in fact, so for example, I mean, I don't want to name any names and I don't want to name any specific groups, but there was one group where one NGO where their focus was mathematics, and they were saying, you're not including mathematics, so we're not going to share it with our members. However, when the intention was that, of course, there'll be some mathematicians who work in the digital sciences, some mathematicians who might say, well, actually, I'm a mathematician, but I'm working in the biosciences. So they could have been included, but because the public perception was INWES isn't taking notice of mathematics. They didn't want to take part. So that was very sad. And not only that, big lesson for me is that, to some extent, that reinforced some of their ideas that perhaps INWES was not inclusive. And so I'm having to work very hard to include them back into the work that we're doing. The translation into other languages, it was both easy and difficult. Thank you to all the volunteers who did so much work on this. But there was a lot of double checking of how the questions were done. And then, of course, the coding and question numbering, we discovered that without question numbering, it was really hard to translate back. So in 2022, we ensured that every question was numbered very specifically so that responses could be translated back. Sample sizes were a big issue, so I had to do some work on that. What we didn't manage to analyze everything based on age and career stage and all regional and local variables. Excuse me. I will want to stop in a moment because I would like to have, introduce Paul Bernard. Apologies, my slides aren't moving forwards. Okay. I did want to finish, say something about sample sizes. There's a big perception out there that everybody knows how many people work in science and engineering and how many, and that we'd be able to count the numbers of women. In fact, it's almost impossible. So the World Economic Forum have an index of availability of scientists and engineers across the world. That is the only global indicator that we have that helps us with sample sizes. We tried to do a sort of estimate of how big the sample size should be for our survey. And you can see on the third column, that if we took 100 as the minimum sample size from South Korea, then the sample sizes, the relative sample sizes for all the other regions, and these countries, by the way, were chosen only because they were appearing a lot in our survey for 2021, that we would have to choose sample sizes, as you see in the column number 3. And that's sort of very skewed and very difficult to do. I mean, I'm not sure what we would do with a sample size of 5 from Mongolia. There would be very little that we would be able to do with that. So we had to put that to one side and focus very much on making sure that we had that when we looked at the statistical analysis, that the statistical analysis told us whether or not it was relevant or not, whether sample size for that particular question was appropriate. Dissemination, we used a lot of volunteer disseminators, and that was incredibly difficult and very helpful as well at the same time. Lots of social media, and made sure that we tried to attend lots of events and conferences with lots of varying messages as well. I would like to introduce now Paul Bernard Noah, and I would like him to talk a little bit about some of the work that he did in disseminating in Africa. Paul, are you available? Are you ready?
Yes,
I will stop sharing.
Sarah. Yes.
Okay, great. I'll stop sharing if you can share your screen. So Paul, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Please, can you active the stream? Because the difficulty is not from here, it's not from you.
You should be able to access now. Can you access now?
Yes, it's okay now.
Great, thank you.
Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, yes, we can. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. My name is Paul Bernard Noah. I had the opportunity to work on this project as a GISE consultant for Africa. Now I'm going to present what has been done in Africa. Before starting, please, my first language is French, basically, but I will do some effort to explain to you in English and hope you can understand what I'm saying in this case. Okay. We started our dissemination with the online seminar with a lot of organization in Africa. Hello? Yes, we had a long online seminar with PAFNet on the challenges of women, girls, and girl-facing STEM career development. PAFNet is Pan-African Volunteer Network on the STEM aspect based in Sierra Leone. I hope his coordinator is online now, Mr. Sori Kamara. A part of some meeting with association, we also had a lot of meeting with UNESCO in Cameroon, in Côte d'Ivoire, in Congo, in Gabon. We also had web session information with a lot of organization focus on the STEM, something like Belotech of Ngaoundéré and EduClick based in Yaoundé. We also organize workshop face-to-face with EduClick. EduClick is association, women association who are working on the STEM issues. You can see the pictures of our seminar, of our workshop in Yaoundé. We also met Mr. Bojo, Romance, the Secretary General of Association of Former Scholarship Holder in Korea in STEM issue in Yaoundé, and he helped us many times to achieve our mission of dissemination, not only around of Cameroon, but also around Africa. We had more than 5 session information with UNESCO Waiver of Peace in KWSE, South region of Cameroon, like you can, as you can see in the pictures. We have more than 5 session information with them, and UNESCO Office of Central Africa help us to achieve our objective. They also organize for us some meeting session with the partner, with some association of women based on education and technology. Because we have a good collaboration with UNESCO. I work with UNESCO since 6 years. I have experience with UNESCO. That's why they also help us to achieve the mission of this project in Africa, namely. A part of the seminar, the information session with UNESCO. We went to Kribi, South region of Cameroon, for the information and exchange session with 40 members of Cameroonian Leadership Academy, including 11 engineers, 12 doctors, 3 mathematicians, 4 computer scientists, 2 architects, 5 social science specialists, and 3 people from other fields. Here is the pictures. Yeah.
Paul, sorry to interrupt. And thank you so much for all these photos. I'm just wondering if you wanted to explain a couple of the problems that you had in dissemination, which would be great. Thank you.
Yes. Finally, I would like to present another last aspect. We organized an important press conference in Cameroon with the participation of the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunication. You can see Madame Laura Pocon, who is attending this meeting now. She attended this press conference and the Ministry of Youth Affairs of Cameroon. We also had the representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in this press conference. You can see the pictures. You can see the pictures. Yes. Okay, and we went to the Congo Brazzaville. We organized many sessions of dissemination, a lot of campaign dissemination with to present the GISE project and KWSE INWES-KWSE. We had a meeting with the director of Computer Training Center, which depends on the Computer and Research Center for the Army and Security, Mr. Alain Ekondi. CIRAS is a body attached to the office of the Congolese head of state of Congo. We also met Mr. Cephas Germain Ewangi, the permanent secretary of Advisory Council for Civil Society and non-governmental organization, who is also the body attached to the presidency of the Republic. As you can see the pictures. After we had the session information with the representative of UNESCO in Congo, Madame Fatoumata Bari, and his staff, as you can see on the pictures. This information session really helped us to attain the objective in the Congo Brazzaville. After our meeting session with Madame Fatoumata Bari, as you can see the pictures, we also we went to the World Health Organization Regional Office for Africa. We had meeting with at the head of headquarters of World Health Organization. We had meeting with Mr. Antonio Palacios, who is expert in education and health issue at World Health Organization Officer for Africa, as you can see in the pictures. After we organized important exchange with the member of civil society in Congo, mobilized by the cabinet of the presidency of the Republic to attend this session information, like you can see on the pictures. With the banner, we have INWES logo, you have KWSE logo to also promote the two organizations in Africa during this session. As you can see in our pictures, you have the consultant here and the participant, and the exchange with the press Congolese, the different journalists of the Congo. And last last one, we had an important meeting with Madame Gassama from Ministry of Post and Telecommunication and Digital Economy. Is in charge. She's in charge of gender issue in this ministry. After our dissemination, we made some observation, as you can see, and after observation, we also suggested some recommendation regarding what we notice in Africa. You can see the effect of this project. For example, awareness of the importance of challenges of the STEM, the influence of GISE and INWES, including RN in several countries in Africa, and even in the most remote area, many Africans did not know GISE and INWES in Africa. This survey gave them opportunity to get to know the two organizations and to see in them a reason for the encouragement and hope to facilitate the access and involvement of girls and women in study and profession related to the STEM issue. Sarah will share with you the report of this dissemination. Last one, we suggested some recommendation in view of the foregoing as well as the request made by the respondent. They find the observation that were made during this survey by the assistant consultant. The following suggestions should be taken into the consideration. Implementation of certain initiatives aimed to supporting and facilitating the access and participation of girls and women in all the areas related to STEM. This initiative will part of the lineage of the impact of the survey will have brought to allow the women and girls to take part effectively in the STEM issue. The time is very limited. I can't read all the recommendations, but I hope now you have really idea about what African people now are expecting now after this project, because after the project they are waiting for more. Practically, they are waiting for more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you. And I think I took far too much time right at the beginning, so didn't give you enough chance to share your some more of your thoughts. We have taken on board that people are now waiting for something to happen. So I'll mention that in a moment. I'll explain what we're hoping to do in the future as a way of using these surveys and studies to continue to advance the work of INWES and KWSE and all our members. So thank you so much, Paul. I'll try and be brief because I do want to allow people to have to ask questions for at least 5 minutes. So let me just go back to my own presentation and share this. And I have gone forwards too quickly. I wanted to very quickly mention about outputs and outcomes. I won't go into some of the details of some of the interesting results because I wanted to mention, and so the interesting results, for example, the differences between the global, between the genders, which some of them are quite marked, some of them are not as marked as you might think. But I did in 2021 just say, actually, there does seem to be a global war of the sexes. But that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But we did notice when we compared the STEM areas of focus in 2021 that there were differences between what the bioscientists thought and what the engineers and digital technologists or information technologists actually discovered. So that sort of highlighted that we were right to think of STEM areas as having slightly different issues. then there were, of course, differences across countries. So in Mongolia, there was something really interesting in that men were more likely to disagree that it was as easy for men as for women, or easy for women as for men to be given the role of professor or principal investigator. And at first, I thought that was an error in our samples or in our questionnaire, but we did a check and it was supported by past reports as well. That was precisely what Mongolian men seem to be very supportive of women in STEM. Similarly, Korean seem to be notably gender equalitarian according to their views about gender roles. However, we know that's not true for Korea, so we had to come to the conclusion that that was true for Korean scientists and engineers as opposed to the Korean population. I'll go on to the 2022 data. We have got a lot of data. We're still doing a little bit more analysis. We're coming to the end of the analysis. The reason why we're still doing some analysis was because there were quite a few very late responses from Africa that we wanted to include. So we're going to be doing an appendix of comparisons for those late submissions, late responses. But we have carried out data analysis, particularly around career stages and never leaving STEM and considering leaving STEM. So we noticed that the global war of sexes continues. If I can move my slider along, which of course goes wrong whenever, and there were in South Korea, we found there was still quite a bit of interesting disagreements. So that was particularly men were more likely to disagree than women that female students are intimidated, i.e. they believe that women students are more intimidated than women believe themselves. From India, we got many comments claiming that there is a bias against men. So I'll mention that again in a moment. But as you can see, we could pull out some interesting results for each different countries and different areas. We also compared the regions with high human development and compared it against high human development index against low gender inequality index. We noticed that, in fact, there was very little differences between HDI and GII, assuming high and low, high HDI, low GII, they were very closely related. And in general, it was quite difficult to distinguish between very high and high, and also between medium and low HDIs. But we did notice these three where there was a distinct difference. So for these three statements, primary breadwinners in households should be men. There was a big difference in attitudes across the four different rankings of Human Development Index. Similarly for F4, another gender role assumption, big difference. Remembering that 5 means strongly disagree. So HDI, very high grouping, strongly disagreed with these statements. But the more you go through high, medium, and low, the more likely it was that there was going to be agreement with those statements. In 2021, we proposed a GISE index. And it was a very simplistic one, which was find the mean difference in values of the scores and then just compare. And the result would be either a 0 if there was no difference, meaning potentially more likely progress towards gender equity, and 1 would mean least potential progress. In 2022, we carried out further work on this. And we divided this up into a slightly different way. We started to look at this differently, and we made use of the sort of OECD good practice guide on metrics. And this is the initial result. And we're now, because we have a bit more data, we're going to do a comparison of include Cameroon as another country. and Anglophone and Francophone Africa as other regions. Here, what you can see is a ranking from 1 to 8, okay, or GISE index of 0 to 1. So 0 means the lowest rank and 1 means the highest rank. And we're making use of two different elements of measures. We have comparative views of gender. Where there is agreement, this is likely to mean potential for better gender equality in STEM. Absolute differences in perception. Where these exist, there is a lack of gender equity right now. So we had to actually, to be able to do this work, there was quite a lot of recoding and preparing of data sets and standardization. But you can compute the average of the comparative views of gender and the average of absolute differences in perceptions and add them together. And 0 would be the lowest ranked with least potential for progress in gender equity. And 1 would be the highest ranked potential country or region with best potential. So these indices allow countries and STEM sectors to compare themselves against each other. They're not absolute indices, they're comparative indices. So I'd like to come to a stop here and just say we do have lots of reports. So if you went to the KWSE website and requested these reports that exist from 2014 to 2018, they're very extensive, very technical. We've also a few copies of some of these on the INWES website. And of course, there's the 2021 report. Later on this year, we expect to publish the report for 2022. But I mentioned next steps, as Paul Bernard requested, and that is we want to set up a community for GISE. We have started doing that, collecting up emails of people that we know were interested in continuing some of this work and perhaps collaborating. We held a webinar on the 8th of December, and the people that you see on the screen were on the panel, and in particular, Katja Iversen said, and this really struck me, and I think this is quite key. Sometimes for progress, it's not about data and evidence and all the rest of it. You do need all of that. We do need all these surveys. We do, but it is about changing hearts and minds. So taking that on board, that is what we're trying to do with the community, and that's what we want to make sure we have very much in place for the future, that we have messages coming out of this that can change hearts and minds. I would like to also mention the assumptions and biases. We're making a big assumption in all of this, that it is women who are impacted negatively by gender inequality. But some respondents quite strongly had slightly different views. Now, some of these views, and many came from India, by the way, so hence the sort of reference to quotas, because in India there can be a quota, but however, they're not generous quotas, by the way, as Professor Seema Singh would be able to explain if anybody wanted more details. And then there was some saying there is gender inequality for males. Well, I think a bit of communication there might change these people's minds. However, I think the comment that I've highlighted here in bold, there is something to be said for the fact that there are some ways in which men are also facing issues, and that maybe we do have to, when we're looking at gender issues and looking at gender inequality, that we also address in our messaging what is the impact on men. So can the GISE data change the world? I've created another, I hope this is more for fun than anything else, but I've created another poll, which I hope you might like to take part in. If I can pull it up now. Here we go. So if I go back, so could the GISE index support progress? I've launched a poll for you, and it'd be great if you would like to answer, as a sort of immediate thought, what your views on the GISE index as proposed might be. A few people have answered. I don't want to influence the bias by updating you all on what the answers are. There's some good scientists in the room, though, however. Okay. And I will end the poll and share results. So thank you very much. This is quite gratifying that nobody thinks that the GISE index will not make a difference. There's a couple of scientists who are very much, well, I do need more information, and I think that that's a fair enough comment. And yes, I do believe that the GISE index might be useful, but it will need backing from many other organizations. But thank you for everybody who also answered too. I mean, that is very gratifying and very useful to know. Finally, a very big thank you to everybody who has taken part, particularly the Korean Ministry of Science and ICT and the KWSE for initiating this project, these studies and these projects. 2021, we had amazing support. Thank you to everybody on this, particularly the KWSE Secretariat, who mentioned the second time and in even larger letters for 2022. Thank you so much to Paul Bernard Noah for supporting in Africa, the country representatives. You've all been amazing. And of course, all the advisors. Thank you so much. I also want to mention Francis Jarry in Canada, who has done so much, and so many of his words are actually in the final report. In Africa, and I'm sure I've missed out names. Paul will tell me that I have missed out names. I'm sure I've got to do a recheck of these names, but here are some of the people who both took part in meetings, but also shared the surveys with their networks.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to do one final poll, and you might have questions. Please, if people have questions, I think we have a couple of minutes left. No, we haven't. We've gone over 2 minutes, so many apologies. But maybe if anybody has got any comments or questions, that would be great. I will put up another poll, but please feel free to ask questions now. Put on your phone, put on your screen, put on your video, and please ask questions. But I've put a poll up here for anybody who really wants to be involved or not, would only want to know about INWES, would like to join the GISE community of interest, and maybe you might be thinking of emailing me with requests, etc., or comments. Please do. But if anybody's got any question, and of course we have overrun horribly. Thank you very much. I'll check to see if there's any questions in the chat as well. Madame Rufina, yes, I will share documents afterwards as well. And of course, there will be the final reports. Madame Rufina, you're asking if the documents can be in French. We're not intending to translate all documents to French. However, I'm sure maybe one of the things we could do is work out how we can produce a short report that is in French as well, a short report that has the key messages. Okay, thank you very much for everybody's answered that poll. I will take that information and make use of it to contact you later. Thank you so much. And before there is one final, I do want to say our president isn't able to join us because she's on the train. She has joined us for part of the day, but she wanted to make sure that her thanks went out to everybody. She has been instrumental in making sure that this project is actually available and that it works for INWES and for KWSE. So thank you, John-san. I don't think you're in the meeting now. You're probably about to get off the train. So thank you very much indeed.
Hello, Sarah.
Yes, Paul.
Yes, I would like to mention some very important thing, because now we are creating the STEM community in Africa, like I told you last time. STEM community in Africa.
Right. Okay. So in fact, if people were interested in that, if they could email me, we'll probably send information about that to anybody who's said that they are interested. And of course, the community of GISE, the GISE community, we can let them know about any new STEM community. That would be great. Thank you very much, everybody. I think we better draw to a close because we are 5 minutes over. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Oh, and Jung-sun is still online. Thank you so much, Jung-sun, for supporting all of this. I'll put your picture back up here. There we go.
Excuse me, should I
Yes.
email? I'm interested in the STEM community. I came in late because of the time where I am. Who should I email?
If you want to email me, and I'll make sure that I pass yes, there's my email down here, sarah.peers@inwes.net. If you would like, you could also put your email into the chat. We are recording this, so it should be, we should be able to pick your email off there, but please also email me just in case.
I don't see your email. Where is it? Have you
on the screen? Can you see it on the screen?
Just a minute. I don't. Let me just type mine.
Sure.
Do
you know
you
what?
see mine in the chat?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
You can see mine in the chat. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now I see yours. Excellent. Excellent. Let me just write it before you shut down the. Are you going to send out the recording because I came a bit late, so I would love to.
Right. Thank you. It is being recorded, and we will put it onto the INWES Global YouTube channel. So I will also make sure that you have. So I've actually copied it just in case of any problems. I have copied this to my own computer. So okay.
I'm glad I got the last minute. Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. No problem. Thank you so much. Okay. Hi, Young. Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for explaining what you did. It was such an amazing amount of work that you did in Africa.
It should be very hard work for you, Sarah.
Hard work for everybody, I think. So, and KWSE did most of the work for 5 years, so that was a long time. I should have put a list of all the authors and all the people involved in those projects as well, because there was many of you. I know that. For anybody who's still on, Haiyang was an expert for 2021 and 2022, and Haiyang is was also involved in the earlier projects and also in the writing of some of the reports as well. So thank you very much. Thank you.
See you very soon.
See you. Okay. Bye-bye. I'm just keeping it open for anybody who wants to have any last minute questions. I notice we still have 2 guests on the line as well as some INWES people. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close off now. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
I couldn't do nothing, so but it was wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, Sarah.
As always, I overran. I talked too much. Okay, thank you very much, Aguri. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.